It was a quiet Sunday morning in the small Texas town of Elridge, where nothing ever really happened. The streets were still, and the rising sun painted the sky orange and pink. But all that peace vanished with one phone call. 911, what's your emergency? I shot him. I shot my husband. He was in bed with our daughter. Oh, God. The voice was shaky, almost broken, but it came from someone trained to stay calm. Officer Marlene Turner, a respected cop with nearly 15 years on the force. Within minutes, sirens wailed through the early morning calm, racing toward the two-story brick house on Route 17. Neighbors stood on their porches in robes and slippers, clutching coffee mugs, whispering in shock. When the police entered the home, they found Marlene standing in the hallway, gun on the floor, blood on her hands and shirt. Her face was pale, her mouth trembling. In the master bedroom behind her lay the lifeless body of Marcus Turner, 48, shot 5 times in the chest and stomach. He was half naked, curled up at the edge of the bed, covered with a blanket and sobbing uncontrollably, was 18-year-old Cassidy, Marlene and Marcus's daughter. Cassidy's words came in gasps. He told me not to say anything. I didn't want it. He made me. Marlene didn't resist arrest. She said nothing as she was led out in handcuffs, still dazed. News spread quickly. A cop had killed her husband in what many assumed was an act of justice or madness or both. Detective Ron Briggs, 62, a seasoned investigator just weeks from retirement, was pulled from a cold case to lead the investigation. He had a reputation for being thorough, quiet, and sharp as a blade. His gray mustache twitched as he studied the crime scene later that morning, carefully walking around the bedroom. "This case stinks," he muttered. "Too clean, too fast." Though the evidence appeared straightforward, a mother walks in on her husband and daughter, loses control and shoots. Something about it didn't sit right with Briggs. There were things that didn't match. For example, the position of the body suggested Marcus had been shot from a distance, not in the heat of a struggle. There were no signs of a fight. The sheets were barely disturbed. Cassidy had no bruises, no scratches, and her story kept changing. And the gun? It wasn't Marlene's service weapon. It was a different pistol, one she had reported missing 2 years ago. Briggs didn't say any of this aloud. Not yet. The media swarmed the town like buzzards. Headlines screamed, "Cop mom murders, husband in bedroom shocker." The town was divided. Some saw Marlene as a hero. Others called her a monster. But the truth was buried deep, and Briggs had a gut feeling. What happened in that house wasn't what it seemed, and he was going to find out what really happened. Detective Ron Briggs didn't waste time. Less than 24 hours after the shooting, he was at the County Juvenile Trauma Center, where Cassidy Turner had been taken for observation. Though she was legally an adult, the attending nurse had admitted her under emergency psychological distress. Her mother was in jail, her father was dead, and her world had crumbled in one morning. Briggs entered the interview room quietly. Cassidy sat at the edge of her chair, legs folded tightly, arms across her chest. Her blonde hair hung messy around her face, and she wouldn't look up. She was wearing a hospital hoodie and sweatpants, though her wrists still bore marks from handcuffs. A standard procedure for anyone found at a violent crime scene, even a supposed victim. He sat across from her and placed a recorder on the table. "I'm not here to accuse you of anything," he said calmly. "I just want to understand what happened." Cassidy sniffled and nodded. "It was early," she said. "I stayed out with friends the night before. I came home late. Dad was already up. Mom was at work. Night shift." "What happened next?" Cassidy paused. Her eyes darted to the floor. "He offered me wine, told me I looked grown. I told him I was tired, and I went upstairs. I don't remember what time, but I woke up, and he was next to me." "In your bed?" She nodded slow. "He said it was cold in his room, and Mom wasn't there. But he touched me. He didn't stop." Briggs didn't interrupt. He just let her talk. "I froze. I didn't scream. I was scared. I didn't know what to do. Then Mom came home. She saw him on top of me." Briggs tilted his head. "You were under the blanket when officers arrived." I had pulled it over myself after she shot him. Did she say anything to you? Cassidy's lips trembled. She screamed. She kept saying, "How could you? How could you?" But I don't know if she was talking to me or him. Briggs turned off the recorder. You told the officers that you didn't want it, that he made you. Are you sure? Cassidy suddenly looked up, her face dark. What kind of question is that? Just the kind I have to ask, he replied, because this is a murder case, and you're the only witness. That afternoon, Briggs reviewed the medical examiner's preliminary report. Marcus had been shot 5 times, 3 to the chest, 2 to the lower abdomen. The shots were precise, not random or wild, all fired from the same angle. No gunpowder burns on the body, which meant the shooter wasn't close. Definitely not a heat-of-the-moment shooting. He also examined Marlene's reported weapon history. The gun used wasn't her duty pistol. It was a personal Glock 19 she had reported stolen during a burglary 2 years ago. But the burglary file was thin. No signs of forced entry, no witnesses, and the case was quietly closed with no follow-up. He raised an eyebrow. Something else bothered him. Cassidy claimed she had just gotten home the night before, but her phone GPS showed she had been in the house all night. Her text messages stopped at 9:03 p.m. The friends she mentioned hadn't replied to messages sent by officers. Briggs made notes. Gun not service weapon. Cassidy lied about timeline. Shooting looked calculated. Blanket undisturbed. Victim's position, not consistent with attack in progress. Back at the station, Marlene had refused to speak. She had a public defender and no desire to explain herself. But Briggs had seen killers, rage killers, crimes of passion. He'd seen breakdowns, even revenge plots. This one felt colder than all of that. He stared at the photos from the scene. The bed was made. The daughter was clean. The shooter used a gun that had been missing. And the father? He died with his eyes wide open, not surprised, not afraid, as if he knew it was coming. Detective Ron Briggs stood outside the Turner home once again, just 3 days after the shooting. The crime scene tape still fluttered weakly in the Texas wind. The front yard had turned into a makeshift memorial, with neighbors placing candles, teddy bears, and handwritten notes. Some said justice for Marlene. Others said rest easy, Marcus. The town didn't know what side to pick. But Briggs wasn't here to pick sides. He was here to dig. He knocked on the door of the neighbor across the street, a sharp-tongued, middle-aged woman named Darlene Smoot. She answered in curlers, cigarette in hand. "Detective?" she said, squinting into the sun. "Back again?" "I need to ask a few questions," he replied. Darlene nodded. "Come on in. Coffee's fresh inside." Her place was neat, filled with religious statues and ceramic roosters. Briggs pulled out his notepad. "You mentioned you heard something that night." "Sure did. Heard yelling around 6 a.m. That wasn't unusual, though. They fought a lot, her and Marcus. Loud fights, too." "About what?" Darlene sipped. "Money. Cassidy. His drinking. There were times I thought Marlene might snap, but she never did, not until now." "Did you see Cassidy that night?" Darlene nodded. "I sure did. Around 10:30 p.m. She was sitting in the backyard, alone. Looked upset. I waved, but she didn't wave back. Just went back inside through the sliding door." That directly contradicted Cassidy's claim that she was out all night. Briggs noted it. Back at the police station, he requested the full home surveillance from a neighbor's Nest cam. Sure enough, at 10:32 p.m., Cassidy was seen walking into the house from the backyard. No signs of friends, no car pickup, no one else followed. She had been lying. Then Briggs pulled the original burglary report from 2 years ago, the one where Marlene claimed her personal Glock was stolen. Something odd jumped out. The report was filed 3 days after the alleged break-in. That's not how cops operate. Most officers report missing weapons immediately, especially if stolen from their own home. He checked who filed the report. It was entered by a fellow officer, not Marlene herself. Curious. He called that officer, now retired, and asked why Marlene hadn't filed it in person. "She didn't want it official," the man said. "She told me the gun was gone, but there was no sign of a break-in. I think she just misplaced it. I told her to report it anyway." Did she say why she wanted it off record? She said her husband didn't like guns in the house. Maybe she was just covering. Briggs leaned back in his chair. The gun used to kill Marcus had never been stolen. It had been hidden, somewhere, safe, until someone decided it was time to use it. He met with Cassidy again later that day. This time he brought printed stills from the neighbor's footage. "You said you were out with friends," he began, sliding the photo across the table. "But this shows you walking into the house at 10:32 p.m. Care to explain?" Cassidy's face went blank. "I didn't. I went out, but I came back to change. Then I left again." "You didn't. The cameras show no one entering or leaving that house from 10:32 p.m. until the shooting. Cassidy, I need the truth." She was silent, eyes locked on the photo. Her voice came out thin and cracking. "I don't remember." Briggs's tone sharpened. "Did your father touch you?" She hesitated. For the first time, she looked genuinely afraid. Not sad, afraid. I don't know." "What do you mean you don't know?" I don't know if what happened was what Mom said happened." Briggs leaned forward. "Did she coach you?" Cassidy's voice dropped to a whisper. "She just told me to stay quiet. Told me what to say. Said Dad deserved it." Briggs felt his blood chill. Marlene had staged the scene. That night, Briggs walked into the evidence room. He looked at the Glock 19 used in the shooting. Clean. No prints, no smudges. Wiped down perfectly. Not what you'd expect from a woman in a moment of rage. And then he remembered something from a homicide 20 years ago. Real rage leaves a mess. This wasn't rage. This was planning. He walked back to his desk and opened a fresh folder. He labeled it. Detective Ron Briggs had worked some twisted cases in his 28 years on the force. But there was something about the Turner case that sat in his gut like a rock. He wasn't convinced this was a mother who just lost control. He wasn't convinced Marcus was the villain. And now, with Cassidy wavering on her story, it was time to dig deeper. That morning, he visited the DA's office with a request. A subpoena for Marlene Turner's financials, personal calls, and computer activity from the past 6 months. By noon, he had a stack of statements and server downloads on his desk. The first clue? 3 weeks before the murder, Marlene opened a new bank account under her maiden name, Marlene Hayes. That account had a single deposit of $9,800, just under the federal reporting limit. The source? A check from an insurance consulting firm based in Houston. Briggs called the firm. The payment was a fee for a life insurance policy update. Marlene had recently amended Marcus Turner's policy, naming Cassidy as the sole beneficiary, not herself. Briggs sat back in his chair. Cassidy would receive $250,000 if Marcus died. A minor under guardianship meant Marlene would control the funds. He had seen this before. Financial motive hidden behind emotional cover. Next, Briggs accessed Marlene's browsing history from her department-issued laptop. What he found made his skin crawl. In the 2 months leading to the murder, she had searched. How long does trauma memory last in teens? How to trigger a psychological break. False memory creation methods. Signs of molestation in sleep. Self-defense, gunshot distance. This wasn't a woman trying to protect her daughter. This was a woman preparing a defense. He needed to talk to someone who knew the Turners better than police reports could tell. So he paid a visit to Marcus Turner's co-worker, Joe Sanderson, who had worked alongside him in construction for the last 8 years. Joe leaned against his truck, arms crossed, eyes weary. "I always liked Marcus," he said. "We'd grab a beer after work now and then. He talked about Cassidy like she was his own, said he raised her since she was 5. Ever mention trouble at home?" Joe nodded. "Not until recently. Said Marlene was acting different, cold, like she wanted him gone. Said he thought she might be seeing someone." Briggs perked up. "Did he say who?" "No name, just that she was working overtime, but her paychecks didn't add up." Back at the station, Briggs ordered Marlene's employment records. Over the last 4 months, she had logged 31 nights of overtime, but her payroll showed only 13. So where was she going? That evening, he pulled traffic cam data and license plate recognition logs. He focused on nights when she logged overtime but wasn't paid. Her car was spotted at the same apartment complex on the south side of town, a place known for housing off-duty cops, divorced dads, and the occasional secret affair. Unit 3B belonged to Officer Darren Locke, a married colleague recently separated from his wife. Briggs called him in. "You and Marlene, something going on?" Darren shifted in his seat. "We, kept it quiet. Started around February. We talked about getting serious, but she said she had to handle her marriage first. I didn't know she meant murder." "Did she ever mention wanting Marcus dead?" Darren swallowed. "Not in those words, but she said he was a drunk, a problem. She said Cassidy hated him. She said it'd be easier if he was out of the way." Briggs updated his case file. Life insurance change, motive, false overtime alibi, premeditation, affair with coworker, leverage, Cassidy coached, cover story. But what sealed it came from forensics later that night. The blanket Cassidy was found under had no signs of struggle, no tears, no DNA from Marcus. For a supposed assault in progress, the scene was oddly peaceful. What's more, the autopsy revealed Marcus had been asleep when shot. A light sedative was found in his blood. The final blow? Traces of the sedative were found in a half-finished bottle of red wine in the kitchen, the same brand Cassidy claimed. He offered her that night. Briggs stared at the evidence board. Marlene had drugged her husband, waited for him to fall asleep, shot him 5 times, coached her daughter into a victim role, fabricated a story about abuse, used her badge and training to cover her tracks, staged the scene to look like a rescue. This wasn't justice. It was execution. Detective Ron Briggs didn't sleep the night after the forensics report came in. He stared at the ceiling fan in his one-bedroom apartment, the echo of 5 gunshots in his mind. 5, not 1, not even 2. 5 bullets into a sleeping man. There was no defending that. The evidence screamed premeditation, but the town wasn't ready to hear it. Everyone still thought Marlene Turner was a betrayed mother who had snapped. And Cassidy, the scared daughter caught in the middle. But now, everything was falling apart, and it was time to push. Cassidy Turner sat across from Briggs, her face pale, arms crossed tight. She looked older than her 17 years now, like the weight of the lie was aging her in real time. Briggs placed 2 printed photos on the table. One showed her walking into the house at 10:32 p.m. The other was the red wine bottle tested positive for sedatives. He leaned forward. "I know your mother coached you." She looked down. "I know there was no abuse. I know your father was sedated. I know the life insurance was changed in your name. I also know your mother has been having an affair and planned this for months." Cassidy's lips trembled, but she stayed silent. Briggs softened his voice. "Cassidy, you didn't do anything wrong. But this lie, it's going to ruin your life. You still have time to make it right. Tell the truth, and I promise the court will see you tried to correct it." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "She told me it was the only way," she whispered. "She said he'd never stop. That if I didn't help her, she'd tell everyone I was involved, that I helped poison him." "You didn't, did you?" Cassidy shook her head violently. "Number I didn't even know she put something in the wine. I thought he passed out from drinking. Then she came in my room, said it was time. She loaded the gun and told me to go lie in bed like he was on top of me." Briggs sat back slowly, the knot in his chest tightening. "She said when the cops got there, to cry, to say he touched me, that I'd be safe, that nobody would ask questions." Briggs stood. "You just saved yourself a lifetime of regret, Cassidy." District Attorney Kim Morales listened carefully as Briggs laid out the full timeline, motive, and Cassidy's new statement. "So let me get this straight," she said, flipping through the folder. "Marlene coached her daughter, sedated her husband, and staged the crime scene, all to gain control of life insurance money and start a new life with her lover?" Briggs nodded. "She never intended to get caught. She counted on the badge to protect her. But now we've got motive, planning, digital trails, forensic evidence, a changed insurance policy, and a full confession from her daughter." Morales looked up. "Issue the arrest warrant. Let's bring her in quietly." Held at the station's disciplinary boardroom, the hearing was supposed to address use of force concerns. Briggs waited in the back as Marlene walked in, still in partial uniform, her face composed. Halfway through, Briggs stepped forward. "We'll be suspending more than your badge, Officer Turner." She blinked. "Excuse me? You're under arrest for the premeditated murder of Marcus Turner, the falsification of a police report, and manipulation of a minor to obstruct justice." Marlene's lips curled, her composure cracking for the first time. "You can't prove—" "We can," Briggs said, producing the signed confession from Cassidy, the lab report from forensics, and the surveillance photos. A female officer cuffed her without a struggle. As she was led away, Marlene turned back to Briggs. "She would have been better off without him." Briggs met her eyes coldly. "She would have been better off without you." Back at his desk that night, Briggs finished the case summary for the DA. It ended with one simple line: "Murder disguised as justice is still murder." The courtroom was packed. Locals from across the county crammed into wooden benches. Journalists filled the back rows, and a dozen TV vans parked outside like vultures waiting for the next piece of meat. The name Marlene Turner had become a powder keg in Texas news. A respected officer, a mother, a supposed hero. Now a cold-blooded murderer on trial. Detective Ron Briggs sat behind the prosecution table, jaw clenched, eyes fixed on the woman who had once worn the same badge he did. Marlene looked thinner now, her cheekbones sharp, her eyes harder. She wore a navy blazer instead of her uniform, but nothing could mask what she had done. With kids, the ones whose stories weren't yet twisted beyond repair. He'd seen firsthand what silence could cost a child. A month later, Cassidy sent him a letter. It wasn't long, just 3 paragraphs. "Detective Briggs, I'm taking GED classes now. Aunt Lana says I'm good at writing. I'm thinking about studying law someday. I want to help girls like me, the ones who are too scared to speak. I still have bad dreams, but they don't own me anymore. Thank you for listening. Thank you for not giving up even when I lied, even when it got ugly. People say cops are cold, but you weren't. You believed in the truth more than a badge, and that made all the difference." Cassidy, not Turner anymore. Briggs folded the letter carefully and placed it in the drawer of his desk, next to his badge.